Has your mental health been impacted by the pandemic? What a stupid ass question. Of course it has. If for some reason it hasn't, you're either a wizard and you need to tell us our secrets, or you're Jeff Bezos and you need to take your bald ass and fuck off back to the cave of skulls that you sleep in. Let's face it, we are all doing terribly. And this has led to a surging interest in finding ways to heal from this collective trauma. Enter psychedelics. A class of drugs that do so many amazing things for so many people. They can cause even some of the staunchest atheists to believe in God. Until you come down and have a look at the world outside. Well, what are psychedelics? Are they safe? What can they do for you? What's the best way to use them? Were the hippies right all along? Or did they just discover the same things that Indigenous people have known for millennia? Hi, I'm Hilary Agro, PhD candidate in anthropology at the University of British Columbia, hippie apologist, and noted internet loudmouth on TikTok and Twitter. I study the way that human beings use drugs, their role in our society, the politics around drugs and drug policy, and the differences between recreational use, therapeutic use, spiritual use. Or are they really so different at all? Disclaimer, I am an academic professional. I am not advocating that anybody use drugs or do anything illegal at all. I am speaking in the context of being a harm reduction educator with the acknowledgement that people are going to use drugs whether or not I tell them not to, and this is me saying don't do it, but if you're going to do it anyway, it's important to provide people with resources so that they can do it safely. That being said, this is all just theoretical for academic purposes. Do not use this information for anything. I am not liable for any decisions that other people make. I'm just relaying what the results of my rigorous academic research have shown me about these substances. Do not do anything legal, like do drugs or sabotage fossil fuel infrastructure. Those are things that you should not do. Don't do them. Why? Stop thinking about it. I can see you. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about getting high and sabotaging fossil fuel infrastructure. And let me tell you, don't do that. Given my internet presence thus far, either you know me or you don't, and know the other topic that I usually speak about, I get tons of questions every day from people who are just curious about psychedelics or, want to try them. The problem with the information that's currently out there about psychedelics is it kind of falls into three categories. One, drug war propaganda that basically says it's bad, they're all dangerous, everything that's illegal is inherently dangerous. But if it's legal, then go have a beer, slam back as many monsters as you want. It's, the system works. Or it's really academic stuff, which is great information, but is not super engaging for a general audience because who wants to learn about psychedelics by reading primary literature besides me? But, I know that that's not super fun when you don't have an ADHD hyperfocus. The third one is, how do I put this? Internet crackpots? Not that I'm saying that, I'm not also an internet crackpot, but I try to keep my crackpottery based in actual reality and research and information and empirical evidence, as well as listening to the real experts, which are the people who have been using these substances for years and years, including Indigenous people who have been using them for forever. There are a few really good resources out there like Arrowhead. A lot of the stuff that I've seen about psychedelics comes from people who have a less informed worldview, and also the thing that sticks in my craw is that it's a politically uninformed worldview, because these substances are political and it does us no favors to pretend that they're not when, we can talk here about ooh, the benefits of DMT and LSD, while the people who are making and providing those things to, bougie white people who are doing retreats and stuff now are in prison. So yeah, it's a political issue, and I'm not going to get too much into that today, although leave a comment if you would like me to in a future video, because oh baby, I could go off. But I just think that what we need is a more holistic, well-rounded view of these substances, and as an anthropologist, that's what I'm hoping to provide. This is just going to be a primer video. I would love to make it a series if people would let me know what other things you would like to learn about psychedelics, the history, more about how to use safely, more about the political context. Just leave a comment. What are your burning questions? So, what are psychedelics? Well, the way academically you can describe it is they are a class of substances that can be used to alter perception and mood. Psychedelics affect all the senses, they alter a person's sense of time, ways of thinking, your emotions. How do I describe this? See, this is the frustrating thing about academic and scientific literature and approaches to these things. It's very dry and just doesn't really get at what the actual experience of a psychedelic is. You know, you read things like, oh, your heart rate elevates and your pupils dilate, but what does that actually mean? What do psychedelics actually feel like when you take them? Well, they're all different, but they do have some commonalities. One way of understanding what psychedelics do and feel like is to think about what it's like to be a kid. When you're a kid, you're just constantly absorbing information. The neural pathways in your brain haven't been like fully set yet. So you're kind of open to anything. Everything is new. Everything is a magical experience. Kids can spend a long time just staring at rocks and leaves and looking at them for their beauty or what's in them because they've never engaged with those things before. As adults, we look at a rock or a leaf and we're like, yeah, that looks like a million rocks and leaves that I've seen before. But when you're a kid, it's new. And what psychedelics do is they put you, and I'm not saying this literally, this is sort of a metaphor that's useful, although actually the neuroscientific studies have shown that this is kind of what's happening in the brain. They put you back into that childlike state. So you are seeing things with a new eye, with a new perspective, and the mundane suddenly becomes beautiful and magical and interesting again. This is part of the reason that psychedelics can be so useful for healing trauma, which we'll get into in a second. But the other thing that this does is, just like when you're a child, you enter a state that is quite vulnerable because things can be scary and overwhelming. And if you don't have a lot of experience with a substance, or you're not in a place where you feel safe, then you can have a bad time. The other thing that tends to happen in descriptions of the subjective effects of psychedelics is that pleasure is left out, especially when a description is being given in the context of like, drugs are bad. It's like, you know, heart racing and sweating and like confusion and loss of muscle control, which is like not something that happens unless you're on way too much. These descriptions intentionally leave out the pleasurable effects that most people use psychedelics for. We're going to talk more about sort of like healing today, but the primary reason that most people use psychedelics is because they're fun and they provide pleasure. So they make people feel good, like physically. They provide physical pleasure. They can enhance the physical pleasure of other things. So food tastes better, sex can feel better, walking in the forest, dancing, music is a big one. Anything that you're usually doing that's pleasurable, psychedelics can make it more pleasurable. Now, not always. If you've ever had the experience of eating ribs while on acid, not something I've done because I've never done drugs in my life, but yeah, I hear it's really unpleasant. Don't recommend it unless you really want to become a vegan. I have a friend who describes acid as the blunderbuss drug. So the reason that psychedelics can make things more pleasurable is that in general they just make everything more. So if you're having a good time, it'll be a great time. If you're having a bad time, it'll be a really bad time. So this is why you want to go into psychedelics very, very carefully and set up your use of psychedelics. Not that I condone any drug use, but I'm a harm reductionist and I'm recognizing that people are going to do them whether or not I tell them don't do it, because human beings inherently like to alter our consciousness. So if you're going to do them, then make sure you set everything up, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. The other thing that psychedelics often do is they have social effects. So people, you know, using alone is with the right setup is fine, but usually people use them socially, you know, with friends, other people that they trust. People who use psychedelics in context with their friends or even family say that it creates, you know, social bonds that really, really last. I've heard lots of people talk about how, like, oh, if you do a mushroom trip with a group of people, then you're kind of bonded to those people in a way because you're sharing this vulnerable experience. So that's a little bit about what psychedelics are and what they do to the body. Humans have been using psychedelics for thousands of years all around the world. There are lots of them. Oftentimes they're used in a shamanic context, so in spiritual and medicinal ways, because often those two things are entwined traditionally in a lot of human societies. What's often done for using psychedelics in healing contexts is a shaman will take a psychedelic themselves and they will communicate with spirits or the gods, and they'll be able to help the person that is seeking counsel make decisions about what to do. They're also used in different contexts of healing, but it's also important to note, in order to not feed into certain problematic narratives and frameworks that have come up around Indigenous use of plant medicines, you know, the sort of noble, I don't even want to say the word out loud. Somebody got mad at me on Twitter once for saying the noble S word. It can be kind of problematic to paint Indigenous people and communities as, you know, just like only healing and spirituality, and just, you know, it plays into this problematic mythologizing of these real human beings who are very complex, and also plays into psychedelic tourism, which is its own whole thing that I can get into in another video. Indigenous people have fun also. They alter their consciousnesses for fun, just like anybody else does. The important thing to understand is that we don't need to talk about the effects of these substances as like really discrete, separate things. Like, it's not just, are you using it recreationally or are you using it therapeutically? Those two things go together. And most people who use psychedelics will tell you that the healing and the pleasure are one and the same. The social bonds, the physical pleasure, the reflections, the healing, you can't separate these things. And why would we even want to separate these things unless we devalue pleasure as a society? Can medicine be pleasurable? Why not? I mean, this is a bigger problem in the way that we deal with drugs as a society. Do you know why methadone is so popular? Because doctors don't want to just give people heroin, because heroin is more pleasurable than methadone. I mean, methadone also lasts longer, and there's a few other reasons, but the main one has been, we want to give opioid users what they need, but only if they're not deriving pleasure from it, which is bullshit, because sometimes pleasure is a part of treatment. Anyways, I just move over. Back's fucked. All right, a little more comfortable. I don't personally love to talk about the Indigenous context of psychedelic use in sort of an unscripted verbal format, because a lot of harm has been done to Indigenous people by anthropologists talking and writing about them, and so I like to have a little more care when I'm going to do that, but I can talk about that in another video if anybody wants me to. My area of expertise is in the use of psychedelics and other drugs in urban contexts. And note that I don't say modern context, because the idea that non-Indigenous people are modern and Indigenous people aren't is a really problematic framework that implies that Indigenous people aren't just as modern and contemporary as we are. So when I'm speaking about psychedelics, that's my area of expertise. Urban use, especially in dance contexts, therapeutic contexts, festivals, hippie shit. But you'd be surprised who is a secret hippie in your community. People who you wouldn't necessarily expect. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, social workers. Yeah, everybody's on drugs. Are psychedelics safe? So this is an interesting question, because it's not really about whether psychedelics are safe or unsafe. Like, yes, they're fairly safe, like just objectively speaking in terms of what they do to the body. Most of them are physically safe and have little to no long-term side effects. Most of them, just in terms of like their effect on your physiology, are very, very safe. Especially, I think mushrooms has basically been determined to be the most physiologically safe drug that exists. Nobody has experienced any negative long-term side effects that aren't, you know, psychological in nature based on use that was less than ideal. So yes, psychedelics are safe, but they can be very dangerous if they're not used carefully. There are 4 things that you need to look at to use a psychedelic safely. Setting, and those are traditionally the 2 big ones, but I'm adding 2 more. Source and dose. The first one, set, is referring to your mindset. So are you mentally prepared to use a psychedelic? Are you going through any mental health crisis? Are you feeling okay that day? Are you really hungry or tired? You know, you want to be feeling generally okay when you're doing a psychedelic, because if you're in crisis or in extreme distress, you're probably not going to have a good time. If you're not really prepared, if you're you know, it's fine to be a little fearful or anxious, but if you're very, very afraid, it's not a good time to become that vulnerable. The next is setting. You want to make sure that you're using a psychedelic in the right place. So, you know, like downtown in your city for the first time, maybe not a good idea. At a really loud music festival when you have never used one before and don't really know what they're about and don't know what somebody's handing you and don't know where your friends are, also not a good place to use. But usually where people have the best kind of experiences are either at home or at a friend's house where you feel safe and comfortable, or outdoors in nature somewhere, once again, that you feel safe. Are you picking up on anything here? Safety is key. The third is source. This is really important because you actually have to know what you're taking, and that's really difficult in the context of prohibition. So if you want to use alcohol, you can go to a store that sells alcohol and you pick up a bottle and you can see, oh, this is 5% alcohol, this is 40% alcohol, these are the ingredients, you know what's in it. That's called a safe supply, and alcohol users have access to a safe supply. Caffeine users have access to a safe supply of caffeine. Tobacco users have access to a safe supply of tobacco. They know what they're getting when they buy it at the store because it's regulated. People who use other drugs, including psychedelics, do not have access to a safe supply of their drugs. They're just making decisions based off of what the person selling it to them says that it's in it. And most of the time the person selling it to them is not lying and is trying to represent to the best of their ability the substance that they're selling. Most drug sellers are not bad people. They just want to make a living like anybody else and provide people with a product that they want. But the truth is that you don't know for sure what is in your drugs if it's unregulated. So knowing your source is the next best thing. I can't tell people how to find drugs. You're on your own. I'd absolutely not do that, even though that's a really important form of harm reduction that I wish I could help people with, because actually accessing a safe drug in the first place is really, really key for keeping yourself safe. But knowing where you're getting your stuff from and testing your drugs, getting a test kit to know whether or not it's actually LSD is really, really important. And lastly, dose. This is a big one because the difference between a little microdose, you know, like 0.5 of mushrooms and 8 grams of mushrooms is the difference between like, I'm gonna get my laundry done and it'll be kind of fun today. And I am going to lie down underneath my bed for 6 hours thinking about the concept of mortality. Actually, on 8 grams, you would probably just get full ego death and you wouldn't really be able to think about concepts like mortality at all. You'd be more like, what are shapes and colors? Going along with this childhood metaphor, 8 grams would be like, you're a baby now, have fun. Versus 0.8 is like, you know, maybe I just went back in time a little bit to a day a few weeks ago when I was feeling really good and being really productive. Oh fuck, I don't like using the word productive when I'm talking about this stuff because capitalists want us to only microdose and only use these things productively so we can make them more money. Sons of bitches. Anyways, so yeah, dose is a really big factor in whether or not a psychedelic experience is going to be safe. How do psychedelics help with trauma? Well, this is not a subject that I am super comfortable speaking off the cuff about, so I'm not going to talk about it for too long. There are other resources out there, and I can link to some of those in the description. But basically, from what we know, psychedelics help to wire new neural pathways in the brain that weren't there before. So when you're used to doing something over and over, especially in the context of trauma where you have this response and it has protected you for a long time and it was your brain's way of protecting you, thank you brain for creating that neural pathway that protected me, but it's not, it's maladaptive now to your life. Psychedelics can help to break out of those regular pathways and give you a perspective where you can see things in a different way than you used to, and it can give you insights whereas maybe you were stuck in a rut before. For my master's research on psychedelic use in the rave scene in Toronto, Ontario, I interviewed dozens, and I think it was something like 42 people or something. Actually, like way too many for a master's degree, but I was a keener. And so here I just want to read a couple quotations and let people who use psychedelics speak for themselves about their experiences with these things and how they healed them. Mark talks about taking LSD and watching a nature documentary with David Attenborough. He was watching this documentary and watching the Himalayas on screen, and this is a quotation from Mark, quote, "And I decided, you know, that thought process in LSD, that I'm gonna go there." He's talking about the mountains. But then I was like, I can't go there because I smoke cigarettes. I can't handle the altitude. And then, I don't know, after about 2 hours of introspective hell, I just kept thinking about, why do I smoke cigarettes? And I don't know, all I could think about was that sense of anxiety one gets. Say it's 11 p.m. and you have 2 smokes left. And you debate, do I go to the variety store to pick up another pack in case I need a third one? And I realized I'm a slave to nicotine. And I just kept on dwelling about that fact. And then after 12 years and 5 unsuccessful attempts at quitting, something just clicked. I quit smoking. End quote. And I asked him, do you think you would credit LSD with this? And he said, quote, absolutely. And he talked about how addiction researchers are looking at psychedelics for helping to create new neural pathways to break out of patterns of addiction, which they are. And he said, and addiction is effectively a very strong pathway. So by finding these alternative pathways, I don't know, for some reason, I just didn't want to smoke. And I vowed to myself to never be a slave to anyone or anything. And he actually did it. He went to Nepal and he climbed those mountains. And so he credits LSD and David Attenborough with helping him to quit smoking and achieve a life dream. One person I interviewed, who I will call Adam, was suffering from PTSD for many, many years and had been put on countless different medications and seen different therapists, and nothing was helping. And he was able to access, and I know I said that MDMA doesn't really count as a psychedelic, but I'm going to use it in this circumstance anyway, because specifically it's good for PTSD and it does share a lot of characteristics with psychedelics. So this is Adam speaking after doing MDMA. Honestly, the first time it was like, I've seen the light. I was like, oh my god, I understand these things that have been going on. I had that moment where I was like, where's my fucking brain been this whole time where I could have solved all these problems? It was crazy. It's like an eye-opener. It really gives you a different perspective on what your situation is. It gave me clarity on a lot of things that I never really thought about before. My conclusion was that it makes brain space that's otherwise busy with other concerns or problems available, and then you can sort of work through things at a faster pace. Yeah, it feels very much like that. And this is still Adam talking. I think the problem with most therapists today, and I think that's what drugs made me realize, is that initially you yourself don't have the sufficient level of awareness to explain to people properly what's happening to you. Your view is completely obstructed by all the shit that's happening, and you're seeing like this tiny fragment of yourself. And there's people that have textbooks and they're just looking through and they're going, okay, this tiny fraction here, this, it could belong here. That's not a problem I have with MDMA, because when I did it, my view was completely unobstructed. I was able to say, okay, these are all of my problems and this is how I've been medicating them. I'm thankful that I did MDMA more than I'm thankful that I've done anything else in my life. This is just 2 examples of dozens and dozens of people that I've personally talked to, and added on to the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've spoken with over my years of doing social media. And these substances impact people really, really profoundly. But they're illegal. That is a whole other problem. So, if these drugs have helped so many people, why are they illegal? Well, good question. Doing a whole PhD about it. We know the answer. It's because of racism and capitalism. That is another whole topic for another video, but essentially most drugs are illegal, and no, it's not. I'm sorry, my beloved hippies, I love you, but psychedelics are not illegal because, oh, if everybody had their mind altered, we would just, you know, throw away the system. That's not how it works. There are conservatives who do psychedelics, and they are still conservatives. I wish that everybody could just take acid and we'd get rid of capitalism, but that's just not the case. The reason that most drugs are illegal is because okay, so when slavery was abolished, they replaced it with Jim Crow because they didn't want everybody to just be equal. They needed all that labor to still produce for the white landowners. When Jim Crow was abolished, they said, what are we gonna do to maintain this cheap source of labor and the racial hierarchy that we use to make it so that white working class people don't see that black working class people are their comrades and allies and fight against the people at the top. We need to keep them fighting each other. So what can we do? Well, let's ramp up the prison industrial complex. Just throw as many black people, especially black men, into prison as we can, And that way we will disrupt their communities and make it so that they can't vote anymore, so that they're politically disenfranchised, completely disrupt and destroy communities so that people are just scrambling to make a living and not to fight back. What's the best way to do that? Well, by criminalizing drugs, which is basically just a way of criminalizing being a person, because most people do drugs, so you can just arrest only the people that you want to. Obviously, communists, anti-war protesters, that was all part of it. So that's in the American context. In the Canadian context, drug laws were similar. They began as a way of oppressing Chinese laborers. When the Canadian National Railway was done being built, they had all of these Chinese laborers that they had brought over from China, and they said, no, we don't want you anymore because there's no jobs and you're taking all the white people's jobs. Yeah, sounds familiar. So we're just gonna make opium illegal because this specific type of opium is being used mostly by Chinese laborers. So we're gonna make that kind of opium illegal, but like keep this other kind that's being used by white women legal. And so, you know, that gave them a way of arresting only a certain group of people. And all of this props up capitalism. The rest of the drugs, like psychedelics, just kind of get thrown into this pot, and we're just gonna make everything illegal. Anything that alters your consciousness in a way that isn't just you know, alcohol or caffeine or sugar, we're just gonna make that all illegal because we just want more people in prison and we want to have an excuse to oppress and disenfranchise the working class and people of color. However, that being said, there is a resurgence right now in psychedelic research, and there are movements of people who are fighting to legalize psychedelics. There's also movements of people who are fighting to legalize all of them, because there is no reason we should be putting people in prison for altering their own consciousness in consenting ways. The reason that we're seeing this resurgence is because in the US they lifted the moratorium on doing research on psychedelics, and so lo and behold, we're seeing what people who have been using psychedelics have been saying the entire time. They're incredibly useful substances. They deserve to be researched, and people shouldn't be thrown in jail for producing, selling, or taking them. We are seeing that now, but as it is, they are still illegal. So, you know, don't do them, because don't do anything illegal. I can't emphasize enough that I am not encouraging anybody to break the law. There is no but. That's all I'm saying. Oh my god, I hate doing this work. It's so stressful. I just want to be able to give people advice without worrying that I'm gonna get in trouble for it. Anyways, please be careful out there. Help us to end the war on drugs, because to the people who want drugs to stay illegal, have you looked out your fucking window? Do you see what's happening? The ocean is literally on fire, and you want to put people in jail for selling plants to each other? You've got to be kidding me. It's so ridiculous. I can't believe I still have to do drug policy work in 2022. With everything else that's going on, we're still cramming people into prison, and it's not okay. And it makes drug use less safe, and yes. All right, well, anyways, I can go off about that later. Please encourage me to, because I want to. Just give me the slightest excuse. Yeah, I don't want to make this video too long. If you can't afford regular psychedelic therapy, but you have a little bit of money and would love to have an expert such as myself help you design like a really fun and beneficial experience, that's something that I'm going to be offering really soon.
So since I filmed that video, I have finished the part of my website where I am offering psychedelic journey curation services. So if you go to my website now, and there'll be a link in the description, I am offering what is called curation services. I offer journey guiding as well for those who are in the Greater Toronto area, but if you don't live there and you can't travel, you can book a journey consultation with me. So this is specifically for people who are interested in trying psychedelics and know they want to do it, but are a little nervous about doing it or want more information about it, want to figure out a best plan for how to set up your experience for the best possible chances of success. So we'll talk about harm reduction, but also benefit enhancement. The goal is to set up your trip not just so that you avoid having a bad time, which is of course what we want, but also so that you have the most chances of having a beneficial experience, to have fun and to feel connection and healing and the things that you're actually looking to get out of your psychedelic experience. I'm offering these services because I've been kind of doing it under the radar for a really long time, and I've decided to open it up to more people in order to support and fund my PhD research. So if you'd like to consult with me personally to set up your psychedelic experience to be as beneficial as it can possibly be, you can check out my website and we can talk some more.
Also, my kids are coming home from childcare really soon. Oh, speaking of which, I do this stuff for free in my spare time, just as like public education. I make very little money. I have to pay for childcare and rent, and it's very expensive. And I would love to do this kind of thing more. I want to keep doing this work. So in order to support me so I can keep doing this work and keep educating people and answering questions and trying to provide good information, support me on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/hilaryagro. You can sign up there. I provide extra videos. I'm trying as hard as I can to answer the questions that people ask. My podcast, Bread and Poppies, I'm going to be producing extra episodes for Patreon as well. So thank you so much to the people who support me on there already. It means the world to me. I have recently been struggling financially like a little bit. I considered selling out for like a hot second. And then was like, no, I'd rather just be broke as fuck and not shill for a cannabis company that exploits its workers and uses like environmentally terrible pesticides. So yeah, please support me on Patreon if you can. Throw a couple bucks my way and I'm gonna keep making these videos. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Be kind to yourself. We're all struggling. It's bad out there, but we're gonna get through this together. We're gonna end the war on drugs. We're gonna dismantle capitalism. Please comment on my video if you can, like it. What are your burning questions about psychedelics? Subscribe to my channel, that's super helpful. And also share this video with anyone that you think would be interested. Please engage. Love you. Bye. I try really hard to make all of the information that I provide be grounded in evidence. If I don't know the answer to a question, I will just say I don't know. But I am good friends with a lot of people who know even more about many topics, including this, than I do. So I'm happy to get other experts on board and have them answer questions too. I'm happy to talk about any of these things. I just want to know what you guys want to learn about here on YouTube, because I know that, for example, on Twitter, my audience wants to see me dunk on psychedelic capitalists. Happy to do that. And on TikTok, my audience has been really interested in hearing some of the more complex issues around this stuff, but I have a 3-minute video limit and nobody wants to watch 3-minute videos on TikTok anyway, so here I am. Want to see my posters? It's a friend from Dance Safe in New Mexico sent me these posters. I love them. I put them together as a background for my TikToks and now for my YouTube videos. Next time I'm going to make this a little tighter. Just tighten things up. Oh God, I love to ramble. Hope you enjoy.